Welcome to the RedState podcast, news, ideas, and conversations at the intersection of politics and culture, a project of the David Horowitz Freedom Center. I will be your host, Mark Tapson. Greetings. Welcome again to the RedState podcast. I am your host, Mark Tapson. Thanks for meeting me here at the intersection of politics and culture. I don't want to start things off with a downer, but things look bleak for Western civilization. The precipitous decline in religious faith, the breakdown of the family, the hijacking by globalist organizations of the sovereignty of free nation-states, the crumbling, in other words, of the three pillars that keep a society grounded and stable: faith, family, and nation. But our civilization has faced extinction before and emerged more glorious than ever. When the decadent Roman Empire fell in the 5th century AD, Western civilization, such as it was at the time, entered a period that many call the Dark Ages. That's a gross misnomer in some important ways, but I won't get into that here. The point is, it was a pretty dark era compared to the relative stability of Roman rule before and the flowering of civilization that came after. Chaos reigned. Literacy collapsed. The infrastructure of the empire fell into disrepair. This period of history could easily have been a dead end for the cultural glories of ancient Greece and Rome, could have been the end of the Judeo-Christian monotheism that was only beginning to transform the world. My wife and I homeschool our children, as I often tell my listeners, and I teach courses to other teenagers in our homeschooling community as well. One of those courses is the history of early Christianity. I tell my students about St. Augustine of Hippo, the great doctor of the church, who wrote the Confessions and the monumental Christian apologia titled City of God. He's one of the towering figures of Christian history who worked tirelessly to shape and spread the faith. In 430 AD, as he was laying on his deathbed in the North African town where he was bishop, the barbarians were literally at the gates, besieging the city. He must have felt like many of us do now, that the forces of darkness were winning and that the fight was futile. More likely, his faith and optimism were just greater than mine, but in any case, things looked pretty damn bleak, generally speaking, for the future of the unique civilization that was born from the fusion of Athens and Jerusalem. But the monks of the early church kept the fire alive. For the next 500 years and more, they persevered in copying and preserving the great works of the ancient world. They devoted themselves to spreading Judeo-Christian values and morality to a world of polytheistic pagans. They literally rebuilt civilization. It took centuries, but the seeds they planted blossomed into the period of the great civilizational bloom of the High Middle Ages, which saw the rise of universities and cathedrals, the growth of cities and literacy, the development of the scientific method, and new technologies, including, eventually, the printing press, and much more. All because, after the barbarians replaced the last Roman emperor on the throne, monks refused to let the light of civilization be snuffed out. Our civilization's been under assault continuously ever since, and weathered many storms, but it's not invincible. All empires, all civilizations fall. What has been required at every turn, and what it will take today, is for those of us who care to keep that torch lit and to pass it on. It requires a cultural pride and conviction that we are the heirs of a grand historical narrative highlighted by the best of humanity. It requires passion and patience. As individuals, we may not live to see the victory. And in any case, the victory will only be temporary. The conflict between darkness and light will always be there. But our duty is to keep the fire alive. Another course I teach is a great books class, and the last novel that we read is Fahrenheit 451 by science fiction and fantasy author Ray Bradbury. If you've read it or you've seen the movie, you may remember that it's set in a totalitarian near-future society in which the populace is manipulated through the distractions of hedonism and mass entertainment, through mass surveillance, and through the eradication of literacy. Sound familiar? This is how totalitarians control the people, by severing you from your cultural heritage, by rewriting the past, and then by wiping your minds of even the memory of the past. You may recall that in George Orwell's 1984, the past is constantly being rewritten to suit the needs of those in power and to keep the people focused on an ever-changing present. Anyway, with that connection cut, people are isolated as discrete individuals with no cultural identity to unite and uplift them. It makes them easy to control. The hero of Fahrenheit 451, Montag, is a fireman, but he doesn't put out fires. He and his fellow firemen confiscate books, which it is forbidden to own, and burn them until a casual encounter with a stranger plants a seed of doubt in his mind, and he ultimately has a revelation about the connection between books, literacy, identity, and freedom. Fahrenheit 451 may not seem like an obvious choice for a great books course, but I picked it because it's timely, and it's one of the few dystopian novels that end on a hopeful note. In 1984, by contrast, the protagonist eventually comes to love his submission to Big Brother. The totalitarians, the barbarians, win. In Fahrenheit 451, Montag manages to escape the totalitarians of the city to the countryside, where he discovers a small community of people, of dissidents like himself, who are committed to preserving the literacy that the totalitarians have banned, the books that Montag himself used to burn. They are committed to preserving not the physical books, but their stories, their ideas, their themes, the civilization that they represent. This community is so committed to preserving these that it has turned itself into a living repository of the forbidden books by memorizing them. Each person chooses a classic book and memorizes it. They keep the words and the past and the culture alive in their memory. They refuse to let the totalitarians erase this civilizational legacy, and they pass that legacy down to the next generation. I tell my teenage students and my children who are younger that they live in a time in which literacy is threatened. Their extraordinary cultural heritage and identity are threatened. Their future is threatened. The barbarians are not only storming the gates, but already inside them as well. It's a time of civilizational decline, and it's going to get worse before it gets better. We are entering a new dark ages, albeit of a different nature from the one into which the early Christians were thrust. And I tell them that their duty is to refuse to let the barbarians win, no matter what it takes. So I'm making my kids memorize War and Peace. Just kidding. I tell my students and children that the only way for the good, the true, and the beautiful to endure and to prevail in this world is for them to embrace the responsibility of embodying and carrying those ideals and values forward. They must be like the community of dissidents in Fahrenheit 451. They must be the monks in a new dark age. That's the responsibility of all of us who care about preserving our values, our freedoms, the best that has been said and done from ages past. In your own small way, do your part. Victory is not guaranteed, but without the pride and the will to fight and to maintain the light in the darkness, defeat is guaranteed. So on that note, I'm going to bring on a guest today, a longtime friend of mine and political pundit who has a brand new book out, her debut book, in fact, about why conservatives must begin to battle in the arena of ideas. And we're going to chat about that book and about the sorry state of our culture and what we can do about it. So please stay with us. Don't forget to subscribe to make sure you don't miss any of the great conversations like the one we're about to have here at the intersection of politics and culture. And please leave a review if you like what you hear. My guest today at the Right Take podcast is a longtime writer and political pundit. She hails originally from the northern wasteland of Canada. She's the deputy managing editor for RedState.com. She's all over the media, guest hosting for Dan Bongino, appearing on Fox News. It's criminal that they don't give you your own show, by the way. Not to mention her awesome podcast called Just Listen to Yourself, which my wife listens to religiously, by the way. Kara Davis, congratulations on your book, and welcome to the Right Take podcast.
Thank you, Mark. It's so wonderful to be here with you and to be speaking with you in person. It's been a long time since we've seen each other in person, but that's because you're a little busy these days. Fair enough.
I stay busy with lots of kids.
Yes, but would love to see it.
I have read the book, which is called Drawing Lines, and the subtitle is Why Conservatives Must Begin to Battle Fiercely in the Arena of Ideas. And I highly recommend this, not because you're a friend of mine, but because I think yours is a voice that we need more of in conservatism. And by that, I mean you're a fighter, and your book is about fighting back. But you're thoughtful, I think, and you're fair minded and you're a peacemaker. And in today's contentious political climate, I think it's easier and more tempting to just appeal to people's worst instincts and throw red meat to the audience and get cheered for, quote unquote, owning the libtards. Why do you think that your approach is more valuable?
Well, I think because I had it's interesting. I just came to this podcast from recording my own podcast. Just listen to yourself. I was talking to another um, Black conservative who was formerly a Democrat, and that is my experience as well. And we were talking about this very thing. And I think that for me, the issue is that, you know, not that I'm not saying that not everyone that other people can't do this, but for me, because I had that conversion experience, I can see the 30,000-foot view, right? Like a lot of times when I'm doing my podcast or even when I'm writing or I feel like I'm writing or talking to myself 30 years ago, 25 years ago now. Um, yeah, I think time has ceased to exist, Mark, in the last 3 years. But I think I've been a conservative for 20 plus years now. So I think about myself then. And I think about what myself wanted to hear, what would have resonated with myself then. It's, no one was ever convinced to consider your point of view by starting out when they start out a conversation going, "Oh, you're dumb. You're just a dumb libtard." That's never convinced anyone. And I am interested in persuasion. I love the idea of persuasion, even the philosophical elements of persuasion I'm fascinated by. And I do believe that there is a path to, if not coming to agreement, and I don't know that I would want everybody in our society to agree totally on everything. But if not on a path to agreement, there's a path to acceptance. If people took the time to just take a deep breath and try understanding some things about one another. Now, Mark, that being said, it doesn't mean that I haven't had some moments where I'm like, you know what? I've had enough. I'm just digging in here. And I feel like lately those moments are are closer together.
Yes. Well, let's talk about your conversion experience. Like me, you used to be a liberal, not a radical leftist, but a liberal, and you bought into all the liberal narratives about your opponents on the right, like I did. But you write in the book about a moment that as you put it, the light bulb came on. Can you describe that moment?
Yeah. So, my journey really started when I began volunteering to run this after school program in Gary, Indiana, which is the inner city, largely Black. All of my kids were Black, and it was, we provided mentoring, homework help, and internet access. These are the days before everyone had a computer in their pocket. So, internet access to kids K through 8. And my father-in-law, who's a pastor and really the first Black man who I met who ever called himself a conservative, my father-in-law said, I think education is, the civil rights issue of our time. And he was really into school choice. And he really sort of guided me along in these conversations. So my mind was kind of opening at this time is what I'm trying to explain. I was still voting Democrat. I still would have told you I was a proud liberal, but my mind was starting to shift. I was seeing I was seeing up close and personal the results of all these policies that I had supported my whole life. And I was now right front and center in front of them. And I was seeing, oh, they don't work. Like I'm watching how these policies are actually destroying my Black community, right? They're destroying our public schools. And so I had a group of kids and I would have been the person and was that person at that time who would have been like, it's just, racism is everywhere and we've got to fight the man and all of the talking points of the left. I had all of those. I might not have been very bombastic about them, but those were things that I thought and believed. And so one day I was teaching a group of kids, I guess they're 8th grade, 7th, 8th grade. And I was telling them that I was going to be gone for a week. The following week, we're going on vacation. And they were like, "Where are you going, Miss Kira?" So I'm going to Jamaica. And one of my girls said, "Jamaica? Why would you go to Jamaica for vacation? That's where all white people go on vacation." And I was like, what? Oh, like, it just took me aback that she would even A, that she would make that connection, but B, that for her that would be a bad thing, that I would be going to a place where there would be a lot of white people. And you do need to understand, we lived in a community where most of these kids had almost no personal interaction with white people at all. There might be one or two white people in their schools. Maybe if they went to a store where white people were working, but they had no, like, a lot of them never had a meaningful relationship with white people. And so for her, it was this big bad boogeyman. And I don't know, it was something about that very moment that this light bulb went on. And I thought to myself, what am I doing? I have been telling these kids, on the one hand, I'm telling these kids, you know what? The man is out there. He wants to keep you down. And, everything is the fault of white people. The oppression that we have in this community is because of white flight. All the white people took their money and left. And, I was very comfortable blaming white America for all of the problems that my kids were experiencing in our community. And at the same time, I'm also teaching them, you know what, if you work hard, you can be whatever you want. If you put your mind to it, you don't have to be stuck in the hood. You don't have to be stuck in the city. You can go out there and achieve your dreams. And that's what I want to help you do. I want to help you be better and have a better future. I was like, these things are contradictory. I'm telling these kids one thing, and then on the other hand, I'm telling them, it's a useless endeavor. You're never going to make it. And it's manifesting itself in this comment from this girl, which is like, why would you go where white people are? And it's like, of course, as a successful adult, I understood, well, you have to go where white people are. This is America. There's white people everywhere. you know?
And so that began your journey toward conservatism. But as a Black conservative, it takes a tremendous amount of courage to identify that way, because Black conservatives are treated by the generally left-leaning Black community like race traitors, and the left just smears you as, all the terms, Uncle Toms, house Negroes, and so on. It's really ugly. Is that difficult for you to deal with, or do you shrug it off pretty easily?
Oh no, I shrug it off pretty easily. And like most things in my life, I took the step forward before I thought about the negative, the drawbacks. So yeah, I'm not very courageous, Mark. I really am not. I'm just stupid. And I don't think, I don't think that far ahead. So, my life is filled with me just sort of leaping. And then everyone going, oh my gosh, that's so courageous. Like, oh no, I just was too dumb to know that there was no cushion at the bottom of that fall. It just happened to work out for me. But I don't take it seriously. First of all, you have to understand, I emigrated from a small island in Canada, Prince Edward Island, where I was the only Black person around, like the only Black person. And I lived in a rural area. And so, for lack of a better term, was around a lot of rednecks and was very familiar with the N-word. I was called the N-word from, my first day at school. Some kid on the bus called me the N-word, and I had to go home and ask my mom what it was, because I didn't know. I know, my poor mom, she was like, what? But that was just set the tone for my entire life. So my entire life as a Canadian was just filled with racist attacks. I endured a lot of physical bullying as well as name calling. I mean, I couldn't even, if I had a dime for every time someone dropped the N-word on me, I'd be a very wealthy woman right now. So I know what hate is, and I know what it feels like. And there's nothing more hateful than the N-word. So really, there's not much more people can say to me that throws me for a loop or makes me feel bad. Like, I've already been to the place where I've been the lowest person in a society that you could possibly be. So there's nothing that anybody can say or call me that would like hurt my feelings at this point. No.
Good. Well, let's talk about the book Drawing Lines a little bit. What is the genesis of this book? You hadn't thought about writing one. I think you were too busy to write one. But then our mutual friend Katie Pavlich reached out to you. And can you tell us what happened from there?
Yeah, I a couple of years ago, I was just sort of frustrated with where we were. I just felt like, you know what? Like, I think it was the whole school board thing and the curriculum thing that's going on, and the CRT was a big impetus for me. And I was like, what is going on? Like, this is everybody, all y'all have been sitting around complaining about the Democrats this and liberals that, and And we've been focusing on sort of erecting this alternative media, but we haven't really been focusing on, our local politics or where we are. And then the election of Donald Trump really was this revelation. Like, it sort of put windows in the sausage factory, I think I say, and it showed us how the sausage gets made, and it's not ugly. And I realize if we don't understand what's going into this sausage, we are doomed. And so I wrote an article about how I was like, hey, everybody, I know that conservatives you just want to be even keeled. You want to go home. You want to go to work, earn your paycheck, go home, take care of your family, do it all again the next day. You don't want to have to get involved in this ugliness, this silliness, this political arguing, grandstanding. But while we've been going to work with our heads down every day, leaving the culture behind, leaving the culture to the left because it's just too ugly for us, it's just too nasty for us, who wants to see that, all that stuff anyway. They have been infiltrating our schools, our television shows, our music that we listen to, everything. They've taken over everything, and they have pushed us back to where our backs are now against the wall. So at what point, everybody, are you going to stand up and say, all right, I've had enough. I'm drawing my line right here. And I don't care if people call me names, and I don't care if people, tell me that I'm a terrible racist, sexist, homophobe, whatever you want to call me. I don't care. Like, at some point, it's do or die, right? And Katie, I wrote that article out of frustration one day, and Katie contacted me, and she was like, here, this is a book. And I'm like, oh, I'm not an author. I write columns. I don't write books. How do you even write a book? She was like, no, you need to, she was like, you need to make this a book. Trust me, I'm going to hook you up with somebody who can help you. And, then it got picked up by a publisher, and my publisher is Fidelis Publishing. I love them. They're a Christian company. It's Oliver North's publishing company. And they pray for me, they pray with me. And they liked the message too. But yeah, that's what it was, Mark. It's just like, I know, cause you're a parent too. And I know, like, just looking around what's going on, what's coming at our kids, I was like, I do want to be that peacemaker. I do want to be that person who welcomes different perspectives and facilitates conversation. But sometimes, like, there needs to be a grown-up in the room, and someone needs to be like, no, you're not cutting the breasts off of this perfectly healthy 13-year-old girl because she told you she was a boy. I don't care what you say. That's ridiculous.
Let's talk about the meat of the book a little bit. You mentioned critical race theory, or CRT. Recently Florida Governor Ron DeSantis was slammed by the ladies of The View, and I use that term ladies very charitably, for rejecting this proposed school curriculum that was promoting critical race theory and Black Lives Matter and Black queering and other sorts of radical Trojan horses. And the hosts of The View said that this was racist Ron DeSantis trying to erase Black studies and erase Black history. And that's the left's strategy now, is to argue that condemning CRT is just an attempt to make Black history invisible. Speaking as a Black person, is critical race theory the same as Black history?
No, they're two totally different things. And the fact that they've been connected is deliberate. And I know there are a lot of you out there who know you don't like critical race theory, but maybe aren't really sure how to frame it or encapsulate it. It is, and by the way, that's by design. You're not supposed to be able to talk about it very easily. And it's an academic pursuit. It's really not, this is not something that was ever supposed to be in our elementary schools. It's an academic theory that's discussed at the highest levels of, like, law schools or philosophy schools, and, but what they've done is they've distilled it and brought it into this more base level, which was always the goal. But there'll be a lot of people who will look at you out there and say, you don't even know what CRT is. You can't, all you know is you hate it. Well, then my thing is like, okay, you ask them to tell you what CRT is. Like, if you ever come across somebody who is, like, insulting you, saying, oh, you don't know what critical race theory is, ask them what it is. And ask them to explain. They won't be able to. And usually what it'll end up being is critical race theory is Black history. See, they don't know what it is either. And critical race theory is a system. It's a system of thinking. It is a way of thinking of our American system as critically corrupt from the inside out. It embodies that notion of systemic racism. So the issue is systemic. It is not people, it is the system. And the only way to eliminate racism is to completely gut the system and start over, because the system is already inextricably infected with racialism and racism. So, but Black history is not critical race theory. Look, I'm all for the more Black history, the better. I love, particularly our history that reflects how Black Americans have helped shape this country, and I'm really fascinated by it. And I think we should tell more of those stories. I wish they weren't just confined to Black History Month, which here in California has really been overtaken by Pride Month. We don't even really celebrate Black History Month that much here in California. Um, and
Pride Month pretty much lasts all year here in California, doesn't it?
It does. Yes.
It's Pride 12 months, Pride year.
It's 12 months. It is, because every city has their own Pride Week. So then that ends up being on the news every day. Like, it's Long Beach's Pride Week, and it's Irvine's Pride Week, and it's it's just like it's Resita's Pride Week, and so you're never without a Pride Week somewhere. And then there's Pride Month, which is at the federal level, and then there's Pride Month at the state level. Like, I this is my next column, Mark. I'm starting to, I really have been thinking about this, but I'm very serious how suddenly we have, like, every faction of society is saturated with LGBTQ agenda. Like, when this is just a small portion, like that hockey player the other day who got ripped a new one because he didn't want to wear the Pride jersey. Anyways, I know I'm getting sidetracked, but that is really on my mind. Anyways, Black history, yes, we should all be welcoming more opportunities to discuss more American history. Black history is American history, and I don't think our kids learn enough about America. So if that's the way we get American history into the classroom, I'm all for it. Yeah, put it on the backs of Black history, and let's go. Yeah, America, let's do it. But critical race theory is a philosophy that takes Black history, sort of wraps its fist around it, and then punches you in the face with it and says, everything that is not related to Black history is white supremacy, or everything that is not related to BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color, that is white supremacy. And so we've got to totally flip this system on its head. It's not only that we're educating people in this area of history that doesn't get enough attention, it's that we're trying to change how people think. And school is supposed to teach you how to think, not
what to think.
Not what to think. Exactly. So critical race theory, I think, is and critical race theory at the end of the day is just an extension of Marxism. I make the case in my book. I draw the lines for you. I connect the dots for you in the book. And that's the most basic view of critical race theory, what you have in my book. I mean, if you want, you'll have to go to other academics to get like the real nitty gritty. I just give it to you as like the most basic explanation I can give you to make it as simple for you as possible. But I absolutely 100% reject this idea that Black history and critical race theory are the same thing. They are not.
Yes, agreed. You also write about cancel culture, which the left prefers to call accountability culture. What do they really mean when they say accountability? What is it they're trying to accomplish?
Blame. Accountability is just blame. When you and I talk to our kids about accountability, Mark, what we say is, taking responsibility for what you've done. If you, ripped your sister's picture in half that she spent all that time drawing and it hurt her feelings, you have to take accountability for your actions. You ripped the picture. You hurt her feelings. That means you owe her the apology, or, the hug, or you tape it back together, or whatever you do to rectify. That's what we tell our kids is accountability. It's standing up for what you did wrong, taking responsibility of that. But this accountability culture, that's not what it means. It means forcing people to bend the knee to an ideology because you didn't like what they said, and to take the blame for, hundreds of years of history. So a kid might make a dumb tweet, and I've got a couple of examples in the book, but a kid might make a dumb tweet at 17, 16 years old. That's just a dumb tweet, right? It's a dumb joke because 16-year-old boys are idiots, and, and that's that. But now he's being asked to not just apologize for that tweet maybe 10 years later, but also make amends for that tweet, not because, oh, you were a dumb 16-year-old boy and you should say you're sorry, but because now he's being asked to bear the burden of 400 years of history that came before him. And it's an unbearable burden. It will break any person. And to ask an entire society to bear that burden will break the society, which I dare say is the point.
Yeah. It's not really about accountability. It's about destroying people. You suggest that fighting cancel culture, that we could fight it by forcing the other side to live by their own rules, which is actually a tactic that was created by the left's radical strategist Saul Alinsky in his notorious book Rules for Radicals. How do we make the cancel culture mob live by its own rules?
Well, you demand, you do what they do. You demand that people get canceled when they break their own rules. And I've seen it over and over again. I mean, there's great examples. You mentioned the I'm using air quotes, the ladies of The View. I think the more appropriate term is persons with vaginas. But you mentioned them, okay, if Whoopi Goldberg says something that's anti-Semitic or, that sort of goes against the hashtag Me Too narrative, yeah, she should be called to account. We should criticize that. I'm not with this. I don't know if you've noticed. I feel like you have, because I feel like we've had this conversation before, but there's this subsection of conservative punditry where there are some people who are like, I'm above those icky right-wing conservatives. I am, I am so fair that I'm one of those people who's like, no, we're not going to do a whataboutism. I'm not going to engage in whataboutism. That's just cheap and tacky. It's not right to play their game the same way. Well, you know what? Where has that gotten us? Nowhere. I mean, we just keep getting pushed back and pushed back. So if these are the rules that are set up, then let them be the rules, and let some of these liberal people who stray off the farm, let them take their lumps. This is if there is a progressive business or organization that sort of runs afoul of the rules that they set, let them pay for it. I'll give you an example. Gianno Caldwell is a Fox News contributor, young Black man. He's been working over at Fox for a better part of a decade now, and this past weekend was kicked out of a restaurant in Miami. He was there with friends. They were eating breakfast, and he's just moved to the area, so they were getting to know him. So they're asking him about, what do you like working for Fox? He's a big advocate for criminal justice because his young brother was gunned down on the south side of Chicago last summer. Total just an innocent bystander, just on his way to school, and drive-by shooting caught him in the mix. So Gianno advocates against these progressive policies that are creating more crime in the city. So he's talking about that. And the white owner of the cafe, the name of the cafe is Paradise Books and Bread in North Miami. She came over to him and she said, "I'm sorry, sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Your conversation is making us uncomfortable." And he said, "What are you talking about? Have I said something that was triggering to you?" And she said, "No, but our politics don't align, and we find your language, to be making people uncomfortable. It's oppressive language. So we're asking you to leave." All right. Well, the rules say that if a white woman tells a Black man to get up from an establishment that he's paying money to eat in and leave, that person's a racist. So Paradise Books and Bread should be canceled, right? That is tit for tat. Now, really what should happen is they should get some bad publicity and everyone goes on their way, and the people who like what she did go there, and the people who don't go there. And that's that. But that's not the rules they set up for us. So until we can go back to that, yeah, these people have to pay. It's the only way they'll learn.
One of the main differences, I think, between left and right, and I think you would agree with this, is that the left has a utopian worldview, and they think that a perfect society can be engineered by coercing people to embrace all the correct beliefs and behaviors and language, like you just mentioned, while the right understands that because humans are fallen, sinful beings, utopian dreams will always turn into dystopian nightmares, as I put it frequently. Would you agree with that?
Well, yeah, and it's childish, isn't it? And I think at the end of the day, there is an element of delayed childhood in progressive policies and progressive activism. Jordan Peterson has a great commentary on this idea, especially what's happening with the transgender stuff. He talks a lot about how creativity in childhood and imagination in childhood is very important. That's why it's important. You go outside, you play cops and robbers. You play princess. You imagine. You those activities with your friends are very important because they stimulate this imagination. And then as you mature, then you leave behind the play pretend and you mature into an adult that has vision without the pretense, right? Well, these are people who have never had the opportunity to play as children, either through the destruction of the nuclear family or addiction to devices, internet addiction, that kind of stuff. And so what we're looking at is a delayed childhood. So the things you would do as a kid, right? Play dress up, wear your mom's lipstick, dress up like your favorite furry animal. Those things are being pushed into adulthood, right? And now we're seeing a group of adults really in delayed childhood, which would be funny, except the problem is these people are in positions of great authority all across the spectrum. And so that's what this idea of utopia is too. It's a childish view of the world. I had that view when I was like 8 years old. Well, yeah, if we could just all get along, like if everybody just had like enough M&Ms and if everybody had, a TV that they could enjoy and we just all had the same things, then everybody would be fine. Like, what's the problem? And it's like, no, that is ignorant of what human nature is. It's like when some progressive Americans go over to like Middle Eastern countries and then they don't understand, like they think that these are just noble cultures just because, and they don't understand like these people have their own rules that are far different from yours. And yeah, if you go to North Korea and you steal a poster off the wall, they'll kill you for it. Like that is right. So it is a childish idea. And that is, I find, to be the entire MO of the progressive left. It's all based in childish notions.
Yeah. You had mentioned the attacks on the family. That's something that I know is important to both of us, family. And you don't write much in the book about that issue, but what are your thoughts about the war on the family that's being waged by the radical left?
In a way, I kind of think the whole book is about the war on the family, though. I might not have a particular section on it, but really at the end of the day, what is America? It is family. It is the notion that, you are building. What is the American dream? It's to build something for your family. Now, that something might look different to you than it does to me. Maybe I want an apartment in the city and you want picket fences in the suburbs. But the American dream embodies this idea of having more and giving more to the next generation. That's what makes it unique in the world. So yeah, there is an attack on the nuclear family. Look, if you go, I've got a section in there on critical race theory and Black Lives Matter and all of you think about all of the stress that we've been going through since 2020, the summer OBLM, as I call it. Well, in the beginning, and I talk about this in the book, right? In the beginning, if you went to the Black Lives Matter website, they had their whole list of their bullet point list of what they stood for, what they wanted. What was on that list? They didn't even try to hide it. We want to dismantle the patriarchy and the nuclear family. Families are made up of all kinds of folks with an X, as if that changes the the meaning of. And they were bold and blatant about that. Why? Because the nuclear family is the basis for any healthy, productive, free society. And we are dealing with people who don't like freedom because they cannot navigate freedom. They don't know how. They need people to be making decisions for them, and they think you do too. So in a way, the destruction of the nuclear family is just an arm of this Marxist desire to reshape America.
Yeah, the abolition of the family, which is exactly how Karl Marx phrased it, that is at the center, it's at the heart of Marxism and today's neo-Marxism. You write also in the book that the left has made government its God. What's the problem with that?
Well, that's laid out in our Constitution, right? When I was first taking my first, little baby steps into conservatism, one of the things I did was read the Constitution. I wasn't an American when I moved here, so I took, my dad's an American. I had the privilege of being in public school in America for 1 year in the 8th grade. He lived in Washington, D.C. But outside of that, didn't really have any occasion to learn American history. So I read the Constitution for the first time. And even when I was still on the fence with my politics, I realized that this document was taking great pains to lay out the argument that none of your rights come from another person. Your rights come from this higher entity, and they're not totally specific about it for good reason. I'm a Christian, so I believe in the Trinity, God, Jesus, the Holy Spirit. But at least they have this notion that's like, no, we recognize that there is a higher power. There is a creator who created all life, who bestows all blessings, and who judges us. And that is who gives us our value as human beings. And I recognize even then that you have to do that, because if you give that power to government, then you give government the power to take that away from you. They put that in the Constitution not only because of what they were seeing abroad, right, with this king, this faraway king, making edicts that, were terrible for these colonies. They saw it in their own colonies. They saw the struggle for power between religious entities in their own colonies. So the original colonies weren't like these people who all lived in peace and they all had the same ideas. They were just as tribal as anyone else. And sometimes like this one religious group would fight for power and they'd win, and then they'd outlaw the other religious group. And then that religious group would rebel and they'd fight, and there'd be like a little mini battle between them. And then they'd get into power and they'd outlaw the other religious group. They just kept going back and forth. So the founders understood it was important to have this solid foundation. No, you can't ban anybody from worshiping a certain way or saying a certain thing, because it's not your right. The God has given this. And so the destruction of faith and religion in this country, it certainly will be the destruction of the Constitution.
One of the things I like about your book is at the end of every chapter, you have recommendations and suggestions for people about what to do. And you suggest in there that people, one of the things they do is take part in local politics. Be part of the system. Don't just complain about the system, but get into the system and change it from within. So run for your local school board or whatever. And I hate the process of politics, actually. I have so many skeletons in my closet, I wouldn't last 5 minutes in that arena. I would make a much better emperor than politician. But,
I agree.
but you took your own advice and ran for your local school board. And so for those who might be considering that, can you tell us what that was like, what to expect, and how to manage that?
Yeah. Well, for me, I was a conservative running in Southern California. My school district is the second largest school district in the state, only behind LAUSD. And there were a lot of people who didn't want me to win, and I didn't win. And it was a brutal process. It was a lot of energy and sacrifice. My family had to sacrifice a lot of time. Thankfully, I work for a great organization that understood the mission and gave me the freedom to go pursue that, and covered me at work while I was out campaigning. But I did learn a few things. Yeah, I learned that, there's always going to be somebody who doesn't want to see you coming. If you're going into politics for the right reasons, believe me, there's a lot more people in politics for the wrong reasons who do not want to see you next to them because you're going to shine a light, right? And then all the cockroaches are going to have to scatter. So you'll have, you may have a lot of forces against you. I also learned that people will flock to a campaign and a candidate who is sincere and has energy. I had an incredible volunteer base. I had a group of volunteers that were so dedicated and kind and passionate. And they wanted, I had them coming from other districts to support me because they wanted to see me win. And I also learned that, yeah, politics is ugly. And so you do need to have a thick skin. You need to be able to withstand some of the slings and arrows that come. And then sadly, the last thing I learned is that there are a lot of voters who are lazy and just don't, they want change, but they don't want to work for the change. I recall knocking on doors, and I would have great conversations with people about, our school district, the things that were coming, all the same woke stuffs in our district that's in every district. And I would talk to people and they'd be like, yeah, you're right. Yes, I'm with you. I can't wait to go vote for you. Absolutely. And I would say, great. Can I put a sign in your yard? And they would go, oh, no. My neighbor's a Democrat. He gets cranky when you do that. He gets so rude. I don't want to cause any trouble. So now that I've lost and our school board has been totally taken over by the unions now, every conservative candidate lost. People are like, they're eliminating the accelerated math here it's an equity measure. So they're eliminating accelerated math in our district. Now I'm getting all kinds of calls and texts from people like, what do we do? And I'm like, no, the thing you could have done was voted, put the sign in your yard, joined my campaign, knocked on doors. I only lost by 1,000 votes, and we could have won with just a little bit of a harder push from some people, better name recognition. So I would say, like, there is that aspect of people being lazy that is very discouraging. But also, I would suggest that if you have the gumption to do it, because even if you lose, you're going to learn a lot about the process. You're going to learn a lot of stuff that can help your community. But maybe that's not what you want to do. Like, not everybody has to run for office, but maybe you become like I always tell people, if you're interested in what's going on in your school boards and you want to make a difference, go sign up for a Moms for Liberty school board boot camp. Doesn't mean you're going to run for school board, but what you're going to do is you're going to learn how to run for school board. So when somebody comes along that you really like that's running for school board, you'll have the training to support them. You can go do their social media. You can go walk for them. You'll understand how to knock on doors and what that's like, all of that. But there's other things you can do right where you are that don't involve running for office. But I think for me, the biggest frustration is, people saying, do something. And so you go out there and do something. And there are just a lot of people that don't have the courage to stand by you while you do it.
Yeah. Why do conservatives find it so difficult to get more politically active? The left has sort of made political activism they have a religious fervor about that. Why do conservatives have to be kind of dragged into that arena, kicking and screaming?
Because we've always believed that our power is at the ballot box. We've always believed in the Constitution. I mean, it's for good reason. We are faithful to the Constitution. We believe in the system that we have, and we believe that it's ideal for making change. And so we go make our change at the ballot box, and that's it. We don't want a revolution anywhere else. Our revolution comes every 2 to 4 years at the ballot box. The problem is that the progressive left doesn't really believe in democracy, doesn't really believe in the republic. And so they've been using other tactics because they can't win at the ballot box outright. I still believe this. My Democrat opponent didn't campaign a single day. He didn't leave. He pulled a whole Joe Biden campaign. He didn't have to come out. I challenged him to debate. I set up a debate. He wouldn't come to the debate. Because his strategy was just to flood the market, right? He outspent me. He just flooded the market with misleading brochures, and that was enough. But and we may have had some other kind of tally shenanigans going on in Orange County, but that's a different show. But because he knew if he was going to come out and be honest about what he thought and what he believed, he would lose. Progressives know they'll lose by being honest about what they believe and what their end game is. So what they do is they attack in other ways. For the longest time, they used the law. And we were very ignorant of what they were doing, right? They took the Supreme Court over and they started just escalating everything and making the Supreme Court a powerful branch of government when it's really supposed to be the least important. They did that. And that's what got us to where we were today when Trump came in and shifted the balance of the court. And now things are a little different, aren't they? Well, they were using the law. They used activism. They used COVID. Now they're using racism and this catch-all of white supremacy to change the system. And we're still thinking, oh, it's only the ballot box. But guess what? They have figured out a way to rig the ballot box too. So whether or not you believe that that's just in the counting process or even just in the process of lying to constituents, like look at Katie Hobbs, didn't campaign really and still managed to win Arizona. And that story was going on across the country in 2022, where Democrats weren't campaigning, but were winning because they have figured out a way to lie that drives their voters to the ballot box. So the ballot box is no longer enough. It's important, people, but it is no longer enough. If we are not out there, A, persuading, and B, infiltrating, we are going to lose.
Yeah, I think another reason that conservatives are reluctant to get involved in politics is because we don't like for politics to dominate our lives. We like to just sort of do what the minimum that's necessary, like you said, at the ballot box, and then forget about it because we want to get on with the business of living and making a living and that sort of thing. But I think those days are over or need to be over.
Oh, yeah. Well, like I say in the book, there's a lot of people. So we're in California, but we also have friends in Texas and Florida and Idaho who are in Arizona who are complaining about all our people moving to their states, right? And they're like, "Oh, tell all your friends like we're closed for business." And they're so mad, and they're coming out here and then they're so dumb. They're like, "You can come out here, but don't vote. Don't vote the way you voted in California to make it the hellhole it is." And I'm like, actually, you have no right to tell somebody how to vote. And those people are coming to you anyway. So what, and guess what? Progressives love government. So they're going to come to your town and yeah, they are going to get on your city council because they love government. They love it. And so the only way you're going to stop them from getting on your city council is for you to get on your city council. So y'all better start getting involved because these people are coming whether you like it or not, and they're going to vote how they want, whether you like it or not. So you might as well shore up your own politics there. Get uncomfortable. There's going to be a time for peace down the road, but we are not in a season of peace. We are not.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the unions earlier. You mentioned that the teachers union now dominates the school board locally there totally. The left likes to market themselves as the party of the working class, but they're actually the party of the unions, as you put it, aren't they? And I love this quote. You said they are the champions of greed and the enemies of innovation. How is the left betraying the working class?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, isn't it? I think we came to that conclusion really during COVID. I think that was the final nail in the coffin for how these parties have flipped. Because when I was a kid, it was like the party of Reagan is the party of corporate politics. It's the party of Wall Street. And it was like, that was pretty obvious to me, right? Like all the corporate heads were these cigar smoking, suit and ties who belonged to country clubs. And that was the meme. That was the image that you saw in your movies and on TV. But during COVID, what we saw was Republicans championing small businesses, local businesses, local control, and Democrats going, no, we're actually going to side with the big corporations here. We're going to force you to make Pfizer one of the biggest companies in the world. We're going to close all the mom and pop shops, and we're going to leave Costco open, Target open, Amazon's still going to deliver. Like, they became the party and are the party of big corporate. I recall being like so frustrated with my mother up in Canada, who's a hippie, raised me as a hippie. I mean, we used to live like this is how hippie we were. We were vegetarians and we lived in a house with no electricity and we hitchhiked everywhere. Like my mom was straight up hippie. And she to this day, she's like a big environmentalist. And she always raised me like you don't trust big pharma and big like she's very anti-Monsanto, like any like food, like big corporation. But as soon as this virus hit and her Canadian version of Dr. Fauci got on air and said, you're a granny killer if you don't take this vaccine. Oh, and by the way, there's only one company in Canada that's going to provide the vaccine and we're going to pay it $13 trillion or whatever they paid for it. My mom's going, yeah, rah, rah. I'm like, how did this happen? You told me to distrust big pharma and distrust these people. And now you're telling me like we're making these people trillionaires. We're giving these people the rights to our very bodies. Like, how did this even happen? So it's just like everything's upside down, but I'm not sure, I don't think I'm smart enough to really lay out the full genesis of how that happened, but I do know that that's where we are right now. The Democrats are no longer the party of the working class. They couldn't care less about the working class. They're still trying to trade on that trait, but more and more people are noticing that that's not it at all. And when you look at Wall Street and you look at where those donations are going, the Democrats really are the party of big government, big tech, big pharma, big corporations, all the thing, big green energy, which has just really replaced the oil industry as the big bad guys.
Yeah. You conclude the book with a short chapter called Are We Waking Up Too Late? At the risk of asking you to give away spoilers, are conservatives waking up too late?
No, I don't think so. I really don't think it's ever too late. I think we're on the cusp. I think we've backed up as far as we can go. And if we go much further, I think we will be shoved right off the cliff. And then America is lost. But I don't think so at all. And in fact, I think that what's happening now is actually how the country is designed to function, which is when we will only be pushed so far. At the end of the day, I believe Americans will have their say and will have their way. And we saw that during COVID. Now, I would have told you, because I'm more freedom-minded, and you would have said the same thing, I know, that in those early days of COVID, by Easter, we would have had enough. We would have told the government to F off, and we're going back to our life. It turned out it was 2 long, grueling years. But eventually, Americans did catch up, right, to it. And eventually, we did say, okay, enough is enough. This has gone too far. And I'm starting to see it even in I think this transgender issue, I think we're about to hit a peak with it. I really do. And so no, we're not waking up too late. It's in this republic, it's really never too late until the day that they set fire to the Constitution, remove the president, and install an emperor. It's never too late. But we have to get in the game. We cannot be satisfied with just going to work and coming home. And I'm sorry to be the person to tell you this. I know that that's what you want to do. I want to do it too, but we're not in that season. If you value the future for your kids, you're going to have to get muddy right now, today. These things are cyclical, just like pandemics, right? Pandemics are cyclical. Where we were due for a pandemic. We got it. We should thank our lucky stars, actually, that it was COVID and not something, like the plague. And, but we hit that. And so that also comes with great political upheaval. So we really are, if you think about it, we're just kind of in a historical cycle right now. I find that comforting, which means we can shift the cycle. We can direct the cycle. So get out there, get your hands dirty. If you get this book, you're, like Mark said, it's not just me preaching at you. It's also me giving you ideas, big and small. You don't have to change the world. You just have to be involved in change right where you are.
Yes, excellent. That's the kind of fighting optimism that I like to hear from the right. I don't hear often enough, actually. And I think that's a good note to end on. Again, listeners, the book is Drawing Lines. It's out now, wherever fine books are sold. And don't forget to check out Kira's podcast, Just Listen to Yourself. But you've got another podcast, don't you? What's that about?
I do. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. So, my friend Amelia Hamilton and I love Hallmark Christmas movies. We're big fans. This is something that people find very surprising about me because I can be very cerebral, but I love the cheesy, comforting, kind of milquetoast nature of the Hallmark Christmas season. And so we're super fans. So we started a podcast. It's called A Very Merry Podcast. We just sort of review Hallmark Christmas movies all year long. Now this year, Mark, talking about the culture, we actually left Hallmark. Hallmark is having some issues. And
are they going woke?
They are a little bit. We were willing to go, like, they diversified a little, but which is great. But last year they had like a couple of gay storylines, which is like, okay, we still went, with it because we were like, all right, well, as long as we have some certain like tropes that we like to see hit in every movie, like as long as the cheesiness of this is here, we're still on board. But it seems Candace Cameron Bure left and started Great American Family Channel, which was the fastest growing channel this year. And we started to see why she left, because the formula of the movies even changed. So it wasn't just the woke aspect of it, but it was almost like the people who were running Hallmark didn't understand what made Hallmark good or digestible for people. So even the way they were making their films changed and they weren't as fun. So we moved over to Great American Channel and it's a blast. We love it. So now we just call this our Christmas podcast, and we review cheesy Christmas movies all year long. In Christmas land, it's always Christmas.
Excellent. Where can people keep up with what you're doing with writing and social media and all that?
You can just follow me on Twitter at Real Kira Davis, and you can find my writings at RedState.com. My podcast, Just Listen to Yourself, is available wherever you find podcasts. But yeah, you can pre-order my book, Drawing Lines, on Amazon right now, or if you want, I think you can get a discount actually if you go to faithfultext.com. Faithfultext.com. I think that's the publisher's direct site, and I think they give you a little discount even from the Amazon price. So.
Kira Davis, thanks for coming on the Right Take podcast.